Hello and welcome, Exiles. So look at the Bloodmage using a variety of skills, showcasing the generic scaling is so good you can take literally any hit-based recastable skill and do some good damage. Now I went through a list of skills that apply to the categories of A, not a channeled skill, doesn't work with Wrathbith if you have a channeled skill, B, doesn't have a massive cooldown, and that eliminated like half the skills apparently, because almost so many of these skills are tied to cooldowns, which is a little bit annoying. And C wasn't a skill I already showcased, like Fireball, Ember Fusillade. To start out with, I'm showcasing things like Ice Nova, Ball Lightning, Frost Bolt, and a few others. You'll notice Ice Nova here is losing its animation. It bugs out after the first few casts, and you don't see the Icicle Ground anymore, which is a little bit annoying. And I chose to do it with the Zesht highest tier difficulty because there's a little bit of clear into a high HP boss just to showcase what the single target looks like on the various skills. That was my thought process. You can say what you want about the showcase, but that is the way I chose to do it. Now, the purpose of doing this is because a lot of you may not like Fireball, may not like Ember Fusillade, but I want to give you hope that if you want to try some variety of skills, you really can do that. There are strengths and weaknesses to a lot of these skills. For example, Arc, the one I'm showcasing right here, was probably one of the best feeling clear skills I've ever played in PoE 2. It just went bananas in terms of like the off-screen chaining, and clear felt really good. The single target here felt a little bit hit and miss, like sometimes you gig a low roll on the hit, or I just wasn't hitting or something. I'm not sure. The pros and cons of these skills are what is going to give you the, I guess, formula for what you want to play. Do you want more clear speed? Do you want more single target? Do you want more aesthetics? Do you just like the vibe of a certain skill? I just wanted to showcase a bunch of skills here just to give you an idea of what they look like in various the context of a Zesht 4. I thought that was a nice showcase test. But ultimately, you can make that decision for yourself if you want to change the tree around for this. The big thing we did to set up this quote-unquote universal skill setup is I showcased here a more offensive option over Defiance, which is a plus level amulet. Now, I want to stress, I personally prefer Defiance. This amulet, if you get a +4 amulet, is about doubling your damage between Defiance versus no Defiance. It is a significant damage improvement. However, when you put on an amulet like this, all of a sudden, the thing where you wouldn't die, where you get knocked down on the ground and the enemies get to wail on you for 4 seconds while your character slowly stands up, all of a sudden you die to that, whereas Defiance, you would not die to that. And quite frankly, when I was using Defiance, we were instantly killing enemies anyways. Does getting more damage on killing enemies all the time very fast, does it really matter? You can make that decision for yourself. Now, the pros of this are you get double damage. The other pro is we do have technically a much higher max hit. For example, when I had Defiance set up, I was around 7k life. Now I'm at around 6k life with 4.5k ES. So this is a better max hit. You do have that one singular advantage at the loss of your shotgun mitigation and your guaranteed survivability on those more awkward situations. Now, the other big change that happened when I swapped over to this amulet is I swapped on an Edziri's Disdain. The idea was, okay, if I'm going to lose Defiance, I want to get something in return defensively, and that was the buffer of ES that we have right here. This gives us most of the ES. We have a little bit coming from Wrathbith and some flat on our amulet, but most of it is purely from this gain life as ES, because we have so much life, it actually is quite a bit of flat ES, and that is how we are getting an actually sizable amount of ES. That tied in with pure energy, with a little bit of ES, and we did end up doing an Adorned with percent ES and crit multi-jewels. This is only something that's necessary if you really want to push your ES a bit higher. Each one of these jewels, Adorned versus non-Adorned, is going to give you more ES. I was doing it mostly to kind of fix my res because I was a little bit scuffed on res when I did this swap. Realistically, just doing rare jewels with ES and double crit multi will get you the same damage numbers, and you'll get to go keep Heart of the Well in the build, which is also very good. So I'd probably recommend doing that over spending more money on an Adorn, but that's what I'm showcasing, that it gives us a bit more ES as well. And the idea is, once you pair those things together, you go grab Zealot's Oath, which makes all of the excess regen you have built up from spending life on your skills with tech rods. That will give you giga sustain on your ES pool to give you a nice max hit. Doesn't protect you from when you fall on the ground. If you don't have built up regen, the enemies will wail on you and you will die, whereas Defiance would just keep you alive. So keep that in mind. You are losing that. That is an opportunity cost that I want to stress, because I personally prefer Defiance, but I'm showcasing this for people that want to go for just make the number bigger in terms of damage. And then next up, let's go over links, because a lot of people were asking about links, and they're actually not super complicated. They're pretty straightforward. There's some go-to supports you pretty much always use, and then you change a little bit out based on a specific utility on the gem you're playing. For example, Bloodletting you always use. This is your mainstay DPS support. And then things like Unleash are pretty mainstay because they have a high mana multiplier. The more expensive you make your skill cost, the more damage you will deal from Bloodletting. And so this is always a successfully consistent damage support, along with extra procs, which helps damage as well. Things like Heft, which give a good fizz multiplier, things like Consider Casting. These are all generically good damage supports that just work together. I will say this, if you get your skill to be too expensive, you can run into the issue where, for example, let's say our life cost of a skill goes above 3,060, which would mean we're spending more than half our HP. If I run into an Executioner mob, I think it's called, which prevents you from recovering life above half, that'll just prevent you from casting. So I would suggest balance your life cost multipliers, so you, whenever you spend, you are able to still cast, that make your life cost not more than half your HP. For example, running into those mobs will hard lock your character from casting. Things like that I noticed when I was playing around with big mana multipliers. But anyways, these are generically good damage multipliers. And then based on what skill you're using, if you're using like Bone Cage, or you're using like Ice Nova, something like Cascade, Astral Protection, those feel good. If you're using something like, let's say, Spark, where you care about the proj speed, Projectile Acceleration 3 or Valenta's Propulsion, those feel pretty good. If you're a pure fizz-based skill, Brutality is a really good link for Bone Cage. Brutality is an okay link for other things, but it eliminates the elemental portion, which I wouldn't recommend because you'll lose out on things like Shock, Chill, or Freeze if you have some sort of, base lightning, base cold, stuff like that. That's the sort of idea. For the most part, these links are pretty mainstays, and then you have a few flexible links based on what type of skill or utility you're trying to get out of the skill you're playing. Scion's Temper for projectile skills always feels very good in my opinion. Granted, you get the circle behavior sometimes depending on the skill, so you have to account for that. But that's the idea in terms of gem links. In terms of tree, the tree doesn't really change at all, except for probably these 4 points here. Cast speed nodes, if I'm doing like an AoE skill, I like swapping those out for AoE. If I'm doing something like Spark, I'd swap those out for skill effect duration. That's the sort of idea. I showcased these skills and not Fireball and Ember Fusillade because we showcased those a bunch of times on our previous videos. I personally still think Ember Fusillade and Fireball was a very significantly good setup in terms of power per investment. I'm not sure if I'm making sense right now, but the point I'm trying to make is some skills are just better than other skills. Like, for example, Ice Nova, just objectively way weaker damage than Bone Cage, has the same AoE sort of functionality. Bone Cage might even have better AoE. If you're going to choose between these two skills, I would just say go with Bone Cage. Stuff like that, where certain skills are just better than others. Things are not very evenly balanced. You can find this out for yourself, but things like Bone Cage, very good damage. Things like Arc, very good clear with decent damage. Things like Spark, very good clear, goes around walls, fantastic. Things like Frost Arts, not great clear, but pretty good single target. Things like Frost Bomb or Frost Bolt, my favorite aesthetic, okay on clear. You have to definitely invest into something like Valenta's Propulsion for extra proj speed, but man, is it satisfying to play. Probably the most satisfying skill I tried out of a lot of these. You got options. I just wanted to showcase that you can take him and do whatever you want. And then outside of that, you just need to make sure you're balancing your extra gems to give you the movement speed proc and the HP proc from this, along with make sure your in gems are highest for chill immunity, stuff like that. But this is this current tree. I just wanted to showcase it for you guys, for those that were asking about the various setups I was trying and showcasing on stream yesterday. I am going to do one more final, I think, test showcase setup, which is maybe showcasing a cast on crit setup is probably the plan. And then after that, we will be doing, hopefully, I'll be finishing the written build guide for the character. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Hopefully you enjoyed. Take care and peace out. Have a good one.